Welcome back to the channel. We haven't done this for a while, but let's look at the good, the bad and the awful in the Everton v Man United game at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Starting with the good, and I think there's only one place to start, and that's Senna Lommans. I mean, what an unbelievable talent he is. He's still only young, like he's still only 23 years old, and just the level of maturity and calmness that he's shown on the pitch, he is definitely an old head on young shoulders, because the performances he's putting in since he's joined the club have been pretty incredible, and that game last night against Everton was definitely his best performance. Everton tried everything they could to try and rattle him, and he stood up to everything. Like, we'll touch on it later on in the video, but in some of those corners he was under so much pressure, and he came and either claimed every ball or punched nearly every ball that came anywhere near him. And some of the saves he pulled off as well, like, not even touching on that, some of the saves were, you know, they were top-notch saves. There was one, I think, was a shot from distance from Michael Keane, and, you know, shades of David De Gea about it. But even some of the other shots that he faced, he was holding on to him. Like, he has a safe pair of hands, and just the level of calmness that brings to obviously the back line, but then that level of confidence that brings throughout the team is just incredible. Like, he's justifying the comparisons to Edwin van der Sar, and that's not to say that he's at that level already. It just means what he's bringing to this current squad is similar to the impact that Van der Sar had when he came along. You know, we're almost like in a similar situation. When Schmeichel left, struggled for years to try and replace that presence at the back that he had. You know, we went through a couple of bogeys, let's be honest. Van der Sar then came in and just settled everything down. Similar thing when De Gea left. You know, we brought in Onana. Bayendier had his time as well, and, you know, there was never that confidence in the keeper. But Senna Lommans is looking like he's just bringing that calmness and trust back into the back line, and, you know, that spreads throughout the team. So it's early days, but it's very, very promising. You know, I mentioned it in one of the group chats I'm in. Like, you think how good he is now at 23. Imagine how good he'll be when he's 30. You know, he's a top talent, and he has a massive future ahead of him. And I can see him, you know, winning a hell of a lot with United if he keeps going the way he's going. And obviously, part of the good section, we can't leave it out, is Benjamin Sesko. The impact he's having off the bench. He's starting to show the qualities that he had and why we signed him. But as well as that, he's kind of similar to Lommans in a way, is that he's shown a maturity beyond his years. There's so many young players now who will throw a strop when they're not starting. But, you know, maybe it's the Carrick factor as well. But at the moment, he seems happy enough to be on the bench and coming on and having that impact. You know, but at the same time, you know, he scored, is it 5 goals off the bench. And he's putting himself in the mix to be in that starting lineup. And, you know, it definitely should be considered. for that starting 11. And now on to the bad. And look, while there was plenty of positives to take from the game, I think one kind of largely negative thing is it was another game where we failed to break down a team set up in a low block. Saw it against West Ham, and it took Sesko coming off the bench to rescue a point. And again last night I saw it, Sesko coming off the bench to get the win for us. Look, you could argue it's probably the one thing that Carrick has gotten, I don't want to say he's gotten it wrong, but it's one thing where he hasn't adapted. He's stuck with the same starting 11 that failed to break down the low block against West Ham. It's almost that thing of, you're trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. For whatever reason, this team at the moment, whether it's a lack of quality, lack of belief, I'm not sure, but failing to be able to break down a team in a low block, and sticking with that. And again, like I said, expecting the same 11 to be able to do it against Everton. Maybe we should have. An argument to be made, I suppose, maybe Sesko should have started. But look, you never know what way that game is going to pan out. If it's a different 11, we could have played worse, we could have played better. You don't really know. Look, at the end of the day, we got 3 points, and that's kind of all that matters. But look, yeah, definitely. We definitely need to improve in terms of playing against low block teams. But again, on the other hand, you can kind of see the argument as well, is that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That 11 have been winning games and playing well, and getting results. Carrick is unbeaten now since he came in, so there is that argument as well. But look, maybe you could have set up slightly different. I think at one point it looked like Mbuma was out on the right and Ahmad was up front, I think in the first couple of minutes of the game. So I kind of thought that maybe he was trying something different with the same 11, just setting them up slightly different. But I think it only happened in a transition, and then it was just back to the same 11. But yeah, look, I think we definitely need to improve against teams that play in a low block. And look, some of the passing that was happening last night as well was woeful. It was a poor performance from both teams, really. We lacked any real quality in the final third in the first half. Some sloppy passes, and just failing to do some of the simple things right. But yeah, look, but as I said, it was a win. At the end of the day, it's 3 points, and we're top 4, so can't complain too much. And then on to the awful. And I think, look, there's only one place to come here, and it's not so much about, and obviously it is about this game, but it's football as a whole, I suppose, at the moment as well, is what's happening inside the 6-yard box at set pieces, specifically corners. I mean, some of the stuff we saw last night at some of the Everton corners, how the referee isn't blown up and given a free out. Like, some of the manhandling in the box, it was closer to WWE than it was to actual football. Like, Everton players throwing the United players on the ground. You're basically setting up to obstruct either defenders and more specifically the keeper. And by the letter of the law, what they're doing is obstructing a player, which is a free. So whether we go back to the referee just being overly harsh and trying to cut that out, because they seem to be allowing it a hell of a lot more than they ever used to. But whether it's a rule change or, you know, a more stricter adherence to that law, I don't know. Like, one idea I had last night, I don't know if many know, like GAA. There's a rule in GAA, and when the ball is being played in from a free, that no player can be in what's called the square when the ball is being played, but you can be in that square when the ball comes in. One idea I had is have a similar rule in football. When a corner is being taken, no player, only the keeper is allowed in the 6-yard box when the ball is about to be played. Only when the ball is on its way in can players enter the 6-yard box. And that will completely eliminate this whole obstructing the keeper and this just wrestling in the 6-yard box. Maybe that's one way you could look at it, but something definitely needs to change around set pieces, specifically corners. It's becoming farcical at this stage, and it's almost boring to watch, because all you're doing, especially the last 15 minutes of that game last night, all we were doing was just watching players wrestle each other in the 6-yard box. But yeah, look, I mean, there's plenty of positives to take from the game. Ultimately, the biggest positives is another 3 points. United remain undefeated, and we're comfortably inside the top 4. If we can keep this going, keep this run going, keep up this level of performance, you know, improving in the areas that need improving, you know, top 4, even top 3 is definitely on this season. You know, we need Champions League football, and not just because United need to be playing the big competitions, but the money that draws in and what will it allow us to do in the summer, because we're going to need big recruitment this summer, especially in midfield. With Casemiro going, you know, there's a possibility Ugarte could move on. Probably should, because I don't think he's good enough. But, you know, it's going to be a big summer for recruitment, especially in midfield. But yeah, look, as I said, it's 3 points. It's another victory away from home. Happy days. We're looking a hell of a lot better than we were 12 months ago. Yeah, plenty of positive takes. But look, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll catch you in the next one.
We've seen it all. We've